This is Your Other Brothers Podcast.
Welcome, friends, to Your Other Brothers Podcast, navigating faith, homosexuality, and masculinity together. From a very rainy, dark, and foreboding, both literal and metaphoric, Jewel of the Blue Ridge, my name is Tom, and I'm so glad you're here. Joining us from the other side of the state, the city of Oaks, it's our other brother, Ryan. What's up, Ryan?
Hey, everyone.
Ryan, I'm so glad you're alive, but we'll continue. Also alive from the city of Forts, it's our other brother, Jacob. What's up, Jacob?
Hey, folks.
Yes, y'all. I'm coughing. I was just telling Ryan and Jacob, I am coughing, which is not the best for any podcast, but particularly this podcast, which we're going to dive into the time capsule that will be forever, episode 60 of the YOBcast. I'm excited to dive into the backstory here very shortly. I'm so glad you guys are here. We're back for another episode. And we're talking about fear today. And that topic is so vast. It's like the Pacific Ocean crashing on every shore. And we're going to talk about fear today in a lot of different ways, starting with a way that is super culturally relevant right now. But before we get to that, y'all, anything new? Anything new with you?
The only thing new in my life is what we're going to talk about, so I won't spoil it. I won't steal your thunder.
The lightning and the thunder. What about you, Jacob? Anything new over in your neck of the woods?
Yeah, I kind of echo that same sentiment that I feel like the most interesting or like new things are all connected to the hot topic of the day, of the century.
The hot topic of the day, of at least the decade. I mean, it's a fairly young decade so far, but yeah. Today we're talking about fear, and particularly, or at least as a starting point, we're going to be talking about the coronavirus, which is something currently spreading around the world. I don't know if y'all have heard about it. It's a thing that's happening right now.
Yeah, greetings from the past before society collapsed.
I know,
we're
right?
having a great time. We're just podcasting and cooking dinner.
This is the age of podcasts and everybody going live on everything, every single platform. All these goofy challenges we're all making for one another, like push-ups and emojis and all sorts of things. It's a what a time to be alive. That's all I gotta say right now. Pretty much. It's really weird because I really like having our podcast kind of being outside of the binds of time. So they're theoretically like anyone could listen to this from, 30 years from now or 300 years from now, and they could get a great conversation about pornography or about, all the things that we talk about, community related things. And so it's really weird. It's weird to me to think about, like, we're talking about coronavirus in the intro banter, and then also as a huge part of our main topic today, which is something we have no idea how long it's going to be with us. We're in the middle of it right now. Here at the end of March, I'm going to just go ahead and date it. This is the time capsule that we're in. We're in March 2020 at the moment of this recording, and we literally have no idea. Nobody has any idea how much longer this is going to be, how many more people are going to lose their lives, how many people are going to get infected, how much longer quarantines and lockdowns and stay-at-home orders are going to be in effect. We have no idea. And that's so strange to me, to be recording within that context, knowing that people will listen undoubtedly, let's hope, on the other side of this and have that perspective. That's so strange to me. Have y'all thought about that? Your voice is being captured forever on this distinct piece of time.
I think there's a part of me that thinks it's actually a really sobering thought to think that. So we are recording this in March of 2020, not knowing what's going to happen in the future. And let's say that like that April brings some kind of new horrendous awfulness, and it's actually like 50 times worse than it is now, of how weird that it is to have like people listening to this way in the future and think like, oh, like they're in March when, you know, the worst that
Right?
was happening was that people couldn't find toilet paper and like all these things. We thought like, oh wow, this is really affecting how we live, not even knowing what's coming ahead, which I
Yeah.
know is a really grim, dark view, but I'm doing that for Tom because I know that
Thank you.
that speaks
You're
to
tugging on
his
my heartstrings right there.
to
It's like,
his
yes, go darker, actually.
foreignness. Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah, I gotta say, I'm 33. It's not that old, but I've lived through some crises, right? Like, I think all of us remember 9/11. We all three of us here remember 9/11. Um, we remember the big stock market crash in 2008. I don't know if there's some other like crises that come to mind, but this is like the most apocalyptic feeling time that I've experienced.
Yeah, because like I don't want to belittle 9/11. That is, please do not take this out of context. But like with 9/11, it was like, okay, there was no flights for like 3 days, 4 days, I think. And then it's like, okay, not that everything went back to normal by any means, but it just felt like a lot more concentrated. Like this huge horrific thing happened. And like, yes, there was a healing process and I was like, what just happened? But it felt like things were back up and running and moving again, at least most of the major things. Maybe some of the other things took longer to come online again. But like with coronavirus, things are shutting down. Businesses and stores are either not open entirely or have limited services that they're offering now. And it's already been like a week or two of this, and we have no concept of how much longer it's going to be. And so it is like this more expansive thing, this crisis that, the uncertainty of it is just the thing that gets at me the most, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and even like other big things, and like I think Hurricane Katrina is also one that's often mentioned as like kind of like a big crisis event. At this point, like those events didn't really touch me personally. Like I think at least with things with like with the recession of 2008, like being at an age where I was a dependent anyway, and so wasn't really affected by like economic trouble at that point. So this is really the first thing that I can think of that I feel like I've been personally, like, even so, not in any way that's been super traumatic yet, but like it has actually changed and affected how I live my life.
Yeah, I mean, this is a thing that's affected everybody, whether you're a student and you're not in school anymore, whether you were working at an office and now you're either working at home or have been laid off entirely. Whether you were planning to get married this spring. I mean, there's like some heartbreaking stories out there, like people canceling weddings because they can't do it anymore. Like there's
Or
just
whether you were planning on going to the Olympics.
Let's talk about that. Ryan, you're speaking of yourself. You were going to go to Tokyo.
I was. For those of you who don't know, I was planning a big trip to Tokyo over the summer to go to the Olympics, and I was going to stay for like 7-9 days with my dear friend Micah, who lives in Tokyo. So I had a place to stay. I had my events tickets lined up. I had my plane tickets lined up. And on the way home, I was going to lay over in Waikiki Beach for 2 nights to help recover from the jet lag. But this morning, the IOC, International Olympics Committee, announced that they would not be having the Summer Games in 2020 in Tokyo. So I'm very bummed about that. Yeah.
Well, hopefully you'll get to go next year. Maybe next year.
There's always tomorrow.
My friend Micah, he and his family might be moving back to the U.S.
Oh no! So that like ruins that whole dynamic.
Yeah. There's a kink in the slinky there.
Slinky kinks. There have been so many.
What a good
slinky
phrase.
Kinks lately. Yeah. Do not Google slinky kink. Well, before we dive into that topic, y'all, because we unavoidably, there's no way to not talk about life in the last couple weeks without talking about the coronavirus. So I figured we would like gently ease our way into this. And yeah, my question was, because I haven't talked with y'all, part of it was intentional to not talk to y'all in the last week because I wanted to save it all for this podcast. So I apologize for not being a great friend in that regard. But I am legitimately curious, just like what let's just limit it, the last week.
Tom, I was socially isolated.
Let's hold on. We'll see.
This is not worth it.
We're going to get to fears, relational fears later.
I had this fear that we weren't friends anymore because you don't talk to me.
Hold on, y'all. You're jumping on me too fast. I have to catch my breath.
Too late.
I wanted to hear the last week of your lives, like just how has it changed? What have been the disruptions? What have been the annoyances? And this isn't being like surfacey about it because obviously this is a deadly thing spreading around the world. But I'm just talking about your lives. How has this affected your daily and your weekly coming in and going out? Like I'm just curious what that looks like for each of you.
Well, this is the most surfacey thing, but it came to mind today is that I stocked up on non-perishables, but I did not foresee how much loungewear I would go through in the week. So I'm having to do laundry like every few days because I have like 2 pairs of sweatpants and then I, wear them as I work from home. And then because I'm not wearing real clothes. No, I'm not going to.
That's what they say though, whoever they are. They're like, no, just keep dressing up as you normally would, be normal.
Oh, yeah.
Treat yourself to, some sense of normalcy. But
well,
you're saying
they
no.
don't know how comfortable these sweatpants are.
Yeah.
So,
well, I just wanted to chime in real quick and say I'm jealous of you though, because like you have your own washer and dryer to which you can use of your own accord.
Yeah.
Versus me, I am like struggling I don't have a washer dryer where I live. I always have to go to a laundromat, and so that is terrifying to me because I feel like laundromats surely aren't the cleanest places. Safest places to go right now. I don't know. Maybe that's just in my head, but I'm like, oh gosh, I need to really limit my laundromat trips. Meanwhile, I'm looking at all of my socks and underwear and everything dwindling away. I was like, maybe it's better to just start buying more underwear, like hit up Pair of Thieves and just like start ordering in underwear for the next 2 weeks. I don't know. I went to the laundromat the other day and I was like holding my breath the whole time. I was like sitting away from everybody, like super social distancing. It was so, I just felt cringy the whole time. Like, oh gosh, I'm going to get something. And I hand sanitized my hands like 12 times on that entire trip. It was a rush. Let me tell you.
Yeah. I've only left the house for groceries every few days. My gym was forced to close. Wake County closed.
Me too.
Just closed all the gyms. But they are doing online workouts over Zoom, a video.
Yeah. Have you been CrossFitting on Zoom, Ryan?
So I've been CrossFitting on Zoom in my home office.
I love it, Ryan. Big high five, virtual high five, or elbow bump, or elbow.
Yeah, that's right.
In these troubled times.
I thought there was a chance this would be the one episode.
No.
That CrossFit would not be mentioned.
We cannot let the virus win.
Apparently. Yeah.
CrossFit is bigger than pandemic.
Yes. Amen. Yeah, no, my coach has been super great about either hosting Zoom classes or he posts the workout on YouTube. And so if you can't make it to the Zoom class, you can just follow the workout from his YouTube instructions.
Someone asked me if they were going to discount my gym membership because it was Zoom classes. And I was like, I want my gym to be still there, at the end of this. So I don't mind paying full price.
That's the thing. Yeah. You can't just stop paying because then it doesn't exist anymore, pretty much.
Right.
Well, I just plan on getting fat and flabby and embracing it so y'all can be.
That's another strategy. You might be wiser than us because maybe.
Absolutely. Because I'm getting ready to hibernate through evil April as it tries.
I'm banking on lung capacity here. So
lung capacity is also
it's two valid strategies.
Worth striving for. Yes.
Sure.
Well, Jacob, what are you doing? Are you working from home? Are you?
Yes. Yeah, I don't think so. My, I would say that most of the things that have affected me directly have been fairly minimal because being in the computer engineering world, working from home is not a huge huge deal usually. So I've been doing that for a good week and a half now. They just in Indiana, they only last night announced that beginning tomorrow we have an official shelter in place, don't go places order. So that means that now everyone actually has to work from home. Other than that, I would say the biggest annoyance has been that my Kroger has been ransacked, and it's just there are just
Kroger.
empty aisles, and like as opposed to actually going to shop for food with an idea of like what I'm going to make, I have to go with just completely open mind, open hand, and say, okay, whatever I can find, I'm gonna just.
Do you put the bandana around your forehead and the assault rifle around your shoulders and barge in?
No, actually, I have a crossbow that
Crossbow,
is
yeah, there we go.
attached to my back, so I get that at.
Do you still have your scooter?
Yes, and then I have encased my scooter in bubble wrap to fit over me and the scooter, so I'm just like a traveling hazmat suit with wheels.
Perfect.
And that's how I get to Kroger.
That's life in the
Ready
new
to hunt.
age that we're in.
Yeah.
So for me, I have this really great neighborhood, and I've just decided I literally mentally need to get out of my house every single day. So if I can't go to like a beautiful, mountaintop vista because the roads are closed and I can't get there, then I'm gonna walk around my neighborhood. And so what I've been doing for the last week is mostly every day. There might have been a day or two that I missed, but I'll just go walking around my neighborhood for 30 minutes, 45 minutes, over an hour sometimes. And I'm listening to this podcast. There's this really great podcast, which I might link in the show notes, but they're doing an episode pretty much every day during the quarantine. And so I've just been treating those walks as my quarantine walks, listening to a quarantine podcast and drinking a cup of coffee that I brewed myself as I go. And that has just been such a beautiful memory of this time, which I will look back on fondly. I hope I will look back on that fondly sooner than later. But
I found the change of pace to be very restful so far. I volunteer in a few places at church, and so all of that is on hold. And while it's been sad not to be able to spend time with church friends or local friends, I do wind up having just a lot more time to kind of fill with what I feel like doing versus things that I feel like I ought to be doing. And yeah, I think that's nice in a lot of ways.
yeah, I mean, I encourage everyone listening, if you're struggling, and we're talking about fear here today. Yeah, if you're struggling in whatever way, mentally, emotionally, relationally, find some daily thing that is beautiful that you can commit to. And so for me, it's my little podcast walks around the neighborhood, which is really great because I've lived here for several months now, and I've driven various streets around my neighborhood, but I'm walking down streets that I've never either been down before entirely or streets that I have. And like the natural consequence of going at a slower pace is that you get to notice more. And so all of a sudden I'm noticing like, wow, that's like a really beautiful porch, or wow, I didn't know there was a creek going through their bridged front yard. Like I've never noticed that before. So it's the change of pace, like you were saying, Ryan. It's something that I'm appreciating on some level for sure. Like it's still very maddening, don't get me wrong, but there is a way that this is beautiful, and I can either choose to see that or not. And so I encourage y'all listening, if you're struggling to see any beauty whatsoever, like I promise you it's there. It is there. You just have to change your perspective and find a way to incorporate that every single day. As far as Yob goes, but yeah, like we, as recently as like 3 weeks ago, we had a Yob retreat planned. We've been doing these yearly retreats for our supporters, our Yobbers. And because of all the virus concerns, the camp where we were going at had to shut down their facilities. We had to postpone our retreat. And so that's one way it's affected Yob itself. But other than that, like I'm really grateful in times like these for digital community and for something like your other brothers, because I feel like, I still have some other friends outside of Yob, but man, this has been a huge chunk of my life these last few years. And in so many ways, not just my work and my productivity, but the relationships, community, and friends. But no, it's like I'm super grateful for our digital community. And the other day, someone asked me, "Is like, Tom, have you heard of this thing called Zoom?" And I'm like, y'all, you don't even know. I've been using Zoom. We've been Zooming with our yobbers for years now. Like, get with the program. Everyone's discovering Zoom for the first time. And it's like the latest craze here in March 2020. People are Zooming with their small groups and their businesses and all of their other important meetings.
We were using Zoom before it went IPO and just have now made a ton of money in the past week in the
I
stock
can't
market.
imagine, like, oh my gosh, the work that has intensified with the fine people at Zoom. But yeah, we've been Zooming, and it's been great to be a part of the digital community. And we're really grateful for our yobbers who make this thing run. If you are interested, there has truly never been a greater time to jump on the Yob Express and to become a yobber. If you're interested in learning more, go to patreon.com/yourotherbros. And yeah, we have all kinds of community things happening. We normally do a Zoom call. We call them Zoom rooms. We usually do those every other week, but for the foreseeable future, for this coronavirus era that we're in, we're actually going to be Zooming every single week. And so that's just an additional community element that's out there for the people in our community. So if you're interested in learning more, go ahead and check out our Patreon. We definitely appreciate the support, especially now. Y'all, we had a brand new Apple Podcasts review, and I wanted to read that for you. It was a 5-star review from tsimonds, I think, or tsimonds, persimmons, something like that. I envision it rhyming with persimmons, tsimonds. Okay, so tsimonds had this to say. The subject line was important conversations. And he said, I just listened to my first episode and want to recommend the show. Thanks, Yob, for the effort to have conversations that many people want to have but don't initiate. I'm looking forward to more episodes. Love from New England. Yeah, so thanks for the love from New England. That's exciting. I feel like New England is like the part of the country where we don't get much love. I mean, I know we have some people listening there, but of all the parts of the country, that is by far like our least populated. Like I don't hear much from New England. So that's super encouraging that this particular person reached out.
Thanks for the review, tsimonds.
tsimonds, yes. Before we get to the sponsor, y'all, I just wanted to put it out here right now that there is a huge announcement coming at the very end of this episode. And not even Jacob or Ryan know what it is. And it includes them. So I'm really excited to share that at the very end of
fear,
the episode.
I'm afraid when people...
No, you're going to love this. You're going to love this announcement. I'd like to think you will anyway.
Are you doubling our pay?
Yes, also doubling your workload in the editing bay as well.
Yes.
Everyone stay tuned to the very end of the episode. Don't check out. If you've already checked out, you need to check back in. There's a big announcement coming that involves Jacob, Ryan, Yob, everything. Everything that you hold and love and know and is dear, this affects that. So stay tuned. All right, before we dive into fear in the era of coronavirus, we have to thank our sponsor. These sponsors came out of the literal woodwork. They started crawling at record speeds toward us. And our sponsor for this episode is Spiders. Thank you, Spiders, for jumping onto this episode. And y'all, we don't get ad reads for most of our sponsors, I don't think, but Spiders decided to send an ad read. So y'all want to hear, have y'all ever heard of the Brazilian wandering spider by chance?
No. It sounds right up your alley, though.
I know. I was like, ooh, I want to know this spider.
It's a good
But then
sponsor
I read
match.
the ad read and it was very horrifying, if I'm going to be honest. It is the deadliest spider in the world, the Brazilian wandering spider. And I'm going to post a picture of it in the episode notes because I have that capability now with our podcast. So if you've noticed our last couple of podcasts, they're embedded with images now. So feel free to fire up, if you are listening to it on the right app, you'll see it on the screen, but I'll put it in the episode notes as well. The Brazilian wandering spider, and this comes from livescience.com. I just wanted to read you a little thing about the Brazilian wandering spider. The description is, these arachnids are called wandering spiders because they do not build webs, but wander on the forest floor at night, actively hunting prey. They kill by both ambush and direct attack. They spend most of their day hiding under logs or in crevices and come out to hunt at night. They eat insects, other spiders, and sometimes small amphibians, reptiles, and mice. Can you imagine a spider eating a mouse?
Wow.
But wait, there's more. Because I'm sure y'all are wondering what happens when said spider bites a human, right? That's the natural progression of things. So here's the answer. After a human is bitten by one of these spiders, he or she may experience initial symptoms such as severe burning at the site of the bite, sweating, and goosebumps. Within 30 minutes, symptoms become systemic and include high or low blood pressure, fast or slow heartbeat, nausea, abdominal cramping, hypothermia, vertigo, blurred vision, convulsions, and excessive sweating associated with shock. And y'all, if that weren't enough, the reason the Brazilian wandering spider made it onto this episode of the YOBcast is for what follows next. It was like the most yob thing I could ever hope to see. Because in addition to all of those symptoms,
Attraction to
in
men.
addition to intense pain and possible medical complications, the bite of a Brazilian wandering spider can deliver long, painful erections to human males. The venom boosts nitric oxide, which is the chemical that increases blood flow. And several studies have even looked at incorporating this venom into drugs for erectile dysfunction.
That is not the direction I expected this to go.
I know, right? When that Brazilian wandering spider wandered our way, I mean, literally, again, 2 hours ago, came out of the woodwork to sponsor this episode, I was supremely grateful for that information. So y'all be careful when you're in Brazil or wherever these things exist. I wasn't part of the ad read. I'm not sure where exactly they exist. Presumably Brazil, but maybe other.
Yeah, I kind of want to know
well.
how far exactly they wander.
Yeah.
They are wandering, yeah.
terrifying.
And so who knows? Who knows where they go? So thank you, spiders.
Very socially distant, thank you.
Yes, socially distance yourselves from our sponsor today. So from spiders that cause unwanted and perilous erections, we now talk about the coronavirus. What a segue. People are afraid. Like, I don't know. I'm going to try to dial it down here really quick. I know it's hard for me to do that sometimes. But again, this thing is escalating quicker, more so every day. I keep like checking updates. On the one hand, it's good to be informed. On the other hand, it's like the more I check and learn about this thing, the more horrified I grow because it's like not ending. Like the curve is not flattening. People keep talking about flattening the curve, and the curve just keeps going up and increasing. And so again, from this juncture in time where we're recording, it's going up and it's getting worse. And so there's a lot of fear going around. And again, I used to be really removed from it. And I don't know that I would say I'm afraid. Like right now, my vantage point is that it's just super inconvenient. I'm not affected physically by it. I don't have any relatives or loved ones who are, which who knows, like that could change. Maybe that is a fear I have if I start to really examine it. But I think with every passing day, there is a growing fear on some level, just because nobody knows when the top of the curve will be reached and when we'll start to like sense some normalcy coming back. But yeah, I don't know. That's just me. And I was curious about you guys, if you just have any general fears about this thing right now.
Yeah, like you said, I currently don't have any personal connections with anyone who has the virus, but like thinking about the fact that my parents are in the age range of like at like a higher risk category, and actually that kind of just hit me last week, and that is actually genuinely scary to think about them possibly getting it and possibly dying.
Yeah. Have your parents like invited you to come stay with them or put that out there during these lonely times, or no? Because mine have.
Yeah, mine haven't, but also like I don't think that I would just because of like the risk that in the process of traveling that I would like bring it to them. It isn't something.
Yeah,
that
I mean that's what I
do.
told my parents. I was like that's super nice of you. I have great parents. I'm so glad I have them, and they invited me to come stay with them. But I was like, worst case scenario, what if I'm carrying something or in transit, like I go to a gas station and I pump some gas and then there's a virus on the gas pump and then I take it with like it's a weird place to be where you're in general, I feel like it's not good to go to worst place scenarios, but in some cases it's healthy to like prepare for that. Like for all I know, there's a 99.5% chance that nothing would happen, but like what if? And that's again, my parents are on the older side as well, just like all of ours in the room, obviously, but it's in that demographic where it's just not worth that risk.
Yeah. My mom is a nurse and she works at a hospital where they'll be treating COVID patients once they're in their hometown. And so I know she's worried about that, and I'm worried for her too. And for my dad, like whenever he gets a cold, it sort of like knocks him off, off his feet onto his back, and he's kind of just a normal cold is hard enough for him. So yeah, my mom called me today and had some stuff to say about that, but then also I'm sure a lot of people are doing this right now, are kind of making sure their affairs are in order because they don't know what the next few months hold, and that's an ongoing process, like they've done stuff like this every few years, but now it's the biannual update of all of that. So yeah, and I think for myself, I don't have a lot of fear on the virus itself, but I do have some kind of more abstract fears around like what'll this do to society? Like what happens if like how much damage has to be done to the economy before it won't grow back, with the 2008 stock market dark period, that was like, some, securities were bad, and so Wall Street was kind of a little out of control, and stocks and the market tanked. But really the economy was fine. Like the actual like concrete, the goods flowing from place to place was fine. Supply chains were there. But with this, like the economy, the actual physical concrete economy is struggling. And I think that's scary to see, to go to the grocery store and I realized that so go to the grocery store and like they don't have produce. Like I realize that's a reality that a lot of the world does have to deal with every day. But I think it kind of hit me hard, like when I went to the grocery store and they didn't have what I was looking for, and they hardly had any fresh produce. And I guess the way, the way I'm kind of looking at it is, well, when things get back to normal, and I hope and pray that they will, I'd like to think I won't take that for granted so much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that often what you find during a time of crisis or trauma is that you tend to see both like the best and the worst of people. And I think that one of my fears is that like things I think it's safe to say that it's safe to say that things are going to get worse before they get better. And as things get worse and people start to panic more and they become more and more afraid, that's oftentimes when then you start to see like acts of violence and looting and robbery, and you as people become more and more anxious, you then start to see the worst of humanity. And I've even heard comments from like folks of like, perhaps is this a time to invest in owning a gun? And just the thought of that question being now like mainstream thing that people are asking, like, is this something that I should have? Just that question makes me afraid of like where we could possibly be heading in terms of just how we interact with one another as a society.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I've already said it a couple times in this episode, but it's the fear of the unknown, which is the scariest thing. It's just like the not knowing where this is going and for how long, and what the other side looks like, because everyone talks about like getting back to normal. Let's get back to normal. Let's get everything normalized again. But like, is there a going back? Like, I wonder what adjustments are made societally or government organized or whatever moving forward. Like, what does the other side of this look like? Not only the crisis itself, but then the post-crisis, preventing another one in the future, where they're like talking about like the seasons of this virus, like, so it'll spike and then it'll go away, but then it'll come back again like a year later, and then hopefully we have a vaccine by then, and hopefully we're more prepared the next time. So like they're already talking about a next time, and so it's all of that stuff that I start. It's so easy to go in a spiral and just start projecting and forecasting how bad things could get, and where this is all going. So again, there's a balance. There's a balance of overreacting, which would be better than underreacting in certain areas, in certain situations. So like not visiting your older parents or your grandparents, even though that seems super extreme, like maybe that's just for the best for the next month or 2 or 3 or more. Like, I don't know. It's weird to say, but then there's also times where you have to be grounded in reality too, and just be like, okay, well, all we have right now is today. And that's such a Christian mindset to like live, to make the most of your days, because you don't know if you're not guaranteed tomorrow by any means. And so let's make the most of today. And so it's hopefully a new perspective we're all learning firsthand in a way that we never have before. Because I know I'm certainly learning to do that. Moving to relationally, because I feel like we were joking about Zoom earlier in the show. But like when we look at relational fears in this era, and relational adjustments that are being made, like obviously churches have been closed. All these churches are going to like digital services now. Small groups are having Zoom meetings. People are working from home. Like, do y'all have any fears just relationally? Like, on the one hand, it's kind of new and different and exciting on one level. Like we're all connecting on this like digital advancement. And I'm so grateful for the internet and technology right now, because can you guys imagine coronavirus 100 years ago or something? Like I can't even mentally grasp what that would be like to not, like, all right, I guess won't see Jacob and Ryan for a year or something. I mean, I don't know how we would be recording a podcast in 1920. So I'm making up this scenario on the fly, but like, I think the biggest fear I have right now relationally is loss of momentum with a lot of my relationships in person here. Like we had a rhythm of grabbing coffee once a week, or having this group every week, or doing this one thing once a month, and so all of that has just been pushed off into some like unknown place on the calendar out in the distance. And so I just have a lot of fears as, I don't know, I'm not going to say I'm more relationally wired than most people. That sounds arrogant, but I value relationships. I value the meaning together, especially as an introvert. Those one-on-one small group settings, like I really thrive in those. The church going to digital doesn't bother me as much. It's like, okay, whatever. Like, it's not ideal. I would rather be in a church, but that doesn't really affect me to my core. It's the more intimate gatherings of people that's sparked a lot of fears too, of the momentum thing. Like, what do things look like on the other side of this? Or is anyone going to even want to still be my friend 3 months from now, because we just haven't hung out in all this time? It's like we've all just adapted to the new way of doing things. Like, I guess maybe it's dramatic, but those are things that I'm afraid of.
Yeah, I get that. Yeah, and I guess I haven't really framed it as something I'm afraid of so much, but yeah, I do miss seeing my friends a lot. And Zoom is great, but it's not, it's not the same. Um, and like you mentioned earlier, Jacob, like the physicality of relationship and touch is missing, and I'm sad about that. And I don't know, like, what happens if this goes on for 2 weeks? Will I shrivel up and die? I don't know.
Nobody knows what Ryan will do.
No one knows.
What about outside? I know it's really hard to picture a life outside of coronavirus. Like I'm like squinting my eyes, trying to figure out what does that look like? What is that? What is that world? I remember those days when things were not burnt to the ground. The days before the event, you know. Um, but like outside of coronavirus, what, you know, to hopefully provide more relevant more relevant conversation discussion for folks listening, not even outside of this time frame but even within this time frame, like what do you guys fear? Do you have fears relationally with there's all these different categories of friendships, so with other men, with women, with single people, with married people, with people who are also gay or SSA, with straight people, like are there any fears that jump out? I know that's like a super blunt question to ask, but like, I'd be curious to hear y'all share what maybe keeps you up at night or what you think about.
Yeah, I think one thing I've been learning recently through talking with my therapist is that I have a lot of fear surrounding boundaries. Like, I have a lot of fear of enforcing boundaries, like fear that I will uh, like make someone unhappy there, displease someone there, but also fear of having boundaries enforced against me, and like wanting something or asking for something or kind of interacting with someone in some way, but then discovering that that crossed a line, um and now like that person sees me as this like toxic, needy person, um who they aren't going to have that much room in their life for after all, because he crosses lines, he crosses boundaries. And really a lot of the more specific things that come to mind fall into that.
Hmm. Yeah, thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, I have a pretty intense fear of being abandoned, of um, trying as hard as I can to be winsome and appealing and attractive, but at the end of the day, not being enough for people to choose to want to be with me and to remain with me. So there's that like that both the fear that I'm not enough and thus will be abandoned, and then sort of the other side of that same coin is the fear that um, once people get to know me and they truly know my innermost being, they will find that I'm too much, or that um, what I or who I actually am when I take down my walls and become totally vulnerable isn't actually what isn't actually a person that they want to have an intimate connection with, and thus I'm abandoned again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can relate with both of those fears, actually. I guess I don't have to share now.
Well, I thought of another one.
Oh, add more to the fear bucket. Yeah.
I have this fear of loneliness and lack of connection and lack of intimacy, that like I have this idea that if I'm lonely enough for long enough, then that will sort of permanently damage me in some way,
Mm.
um, that will make me incapable of, or make it harder to connect with people, or find intimacy with people. And then that in turn will cause me to be more lonely, in that it would be this like negative feedback loop that just keeps spiraling and spiraling.
Yeah, I definitely relate with that, with maybe entirely, but at the very least in the specific arena of living situations. Like I've been living alone for, gosh, almost like 2 years now. And there's a part of me it's been really good and really healthy. And I'm grateful for the time to have all to myself and the space to myself. But there is a part of me that fears like, gosh, can I ever cohabitate with another human or humans again? If that situation were ever to present itself, like, has this just become the new normal, the new way that I operate and thrive? And is that a bad thing? Is it a good thing? Like, I don't know. I worry that something has been irreparably done for the worse, that, nope, I can't have that level of intimacy or connection, having roommates or having a wife one day or what have you. But it's just like too much. Like this is just the new rewired Tom, for better or worse. And yeah, I think piggybacking off of you a little bit, Jacob, you know, vulnerability has become such a branding thing for me, even outside of Yob. Like I'm just known. That's how people find me on the internet. Like, oh, Tom, he's just really, really vulnerable about his struggles and he puts it out there. He lays it all on the line. And on the one hand, like I absolutely see that as courageous and I'm proud of myself for the way I've opened up. But there's that fear that how does that translate to my personal relationships? Can I still be that open and that vulnerable, or even to another degree? Because what I've shared in my books and writings, and even on this podcast, there's a whole nother layer to me that I'm not about to share anytime soon. And that's what counseling is for. And God bless, when you mentioned counseling, Ryan, I just wanted to give a big shout out to digital counseling, because I guess that could be a third sponsor of our podcast after Spiders and Zoom. Digital counseling, huge thing that I've been grateful for in this time of isolation and quarantines. But yeah, like trying to figure out that balance of vulnerability, practicality. Like, am I wise enough to know what to share and what not to share with people? And and if I share something, will it be received or will it be pushed away, or what? What will happen? How will it definitively change the relationship? Hopefully for the good, but what if not? What if for the worse? So that's a constant fear I have in the age of being the struggle guy, known as the struggle guy. Like how much is too much, and how much is just enough, and how much is not enough in my relationships, especially that inner ring of relationships that I've built. Sexual fears.
I'm gonna go with spiders.
Yes. Something to definitely be sexually terrified of. Sexual fears. I wanted to throw that into the conversation because we talk about sexuality on our community. Obviously, that tends to be a thing that we discuss. And so, yeah, I just was curious just to touch on that, sexual fears. And so what I mean by that is, like, if, the three of us are single at this moment and walking a road of celibacy, I'm just curious, if you forecast your life, if that's the way it is for the next 40, 50, 60 years, then does anything come up as scary or fearful?
So I think that I've talked about this on this podcast in the past, of that the idea of home is one that's incredibly important and meaningful to me, and what it looks like to not only create and build a home, but also to feel at home. And one of my continued fears is that I will never feel at home, that I will never feel that peace and contentment and joy and reality of being known and loved completely for who I am. Um, that will just always be something that will be missing for the rest of my life. And I think I I know enough now to know that kind of longing and that kind of fear is not unique to being single. And so I don't want to I don't want to have people hear that, oh, he's saying that the reason why he feels that way is because he's single and he's not married, and he thinks that if he were to get married, that would be what would fulfill all of those longings. I know that um, that's not the case, but at the same time, um, I also have um, experienced greater measures of relational satisfaction and those feelings of people that feel like home in the past that I don't presently feel. And it makes me afraid that I never will. again?
So when I think about my life, that's not so much a concern or a fear of me like abandoning a theology or a set of convictions. I feel fairly firm and solid in those and in my desires, learning the desires of my heart, which are wired more toward like brotherhood and male connection versus like having a life partner per se. Um, but what I struggle with though, I think with walking this road of if I remain single, singleness and celibacy is wondering who else is still walking with me, because I think that's the fear is if I'm doing it, and this kind of ties back to relational fears, I guess it's like a combination of relational sexual fears, but like yeah, in the last several years, last decade, I guess I've developed some really great relationships, super uplifting, amazing men who are walking this road with me, and the thought of some of them not anymore for whatever reason,
Mm-hmm.
30 years from now, 5 years from now, that strikes a lot of fear and dread in me, and wondering what that does to my morale, to my resolve. I think that's the thing that I fear more so than just choosing another path of my own volition. It's just like either feeling forced to do it by the people around me, and then wondering the strength of my conviction. Is it strong enough to withstand, even if everyone walked away, would I still follow what I believe Christ is calling me to do? Like that's what I get afraid of when I really start to forecast my life, which I try not to do often. But that is inevitably there when I think about the future. That's something that I wonder, like, can I be a 65-year-old single celibate man who has walked this road for decades upon decades, whether or not there were other people doing it along with me the whole time? Like, I'd like to think that yes, I could and would, but obviously I won't know until I get there.
Trying to figure out the best analogy for this.
Use a spider. They sponsored this show.
That's going to be connected, I think, to the Brazilian wandering spider. I think being same-sex attracted or gay in our society is a little like having an erection, where like it's okay, like on a abstract kind of on an abstract ideological level, like it's okay to have an erection. You know, we realize that happens to people, and just don't let anyone know that you have one right now. You know, like don't let your sexuality like press up against anything. You know, like don't let it take up space in the world, because, and I think this can be especially true in the church, because we don't want to really know what it's like. You know, we don't we don't want to know the shape of it. We don't want to know, you
Right.
know, we don't want to touch it. We don't want, you know. And so I think like I realized I have this fear um of letting my sexuality take up space in my relationships, in my community. And like I have this fear um rejection around that, that it's not going to be that, like, as much as it's accepted in kind of the abstract ideological way that it has been, that once we get into like kind of the concrete, like what does that mean to have a relationship with me as a gay man, like that, then people will find that unacceptable.
Yeah, I think to kind of echo that a little bit, having this fear that all of my longings and desires for connection, especially with other men, will always be seen and felt as slightly perverted or slightly tainted, and never as something
Mm,
that can be received as others with joy and with celebration of that. There will always be um, this kind of nagging question, or others will kind of always be like wondering, like is that like really good that that's how you feel? Like, do you only feel those things because you experience same sex attraction? And if that's the case, like, isn't all of your longing for male intimacy, just like a little bit sinful. And I think that that fear that I can never um, persuade or convince people of any purity of my desires is really scary and exhausting.
Yeah, definitely. I wanted to close our fear-ridden conversations by focusing on the spiritual. And when I was thinking about questions, sometimes I like to list like six to eight questions on things that we like to talk about on these episodes. But with spiritual fears, really my single question was, do you fear that Jesus won't be enough? Do you ever fear that that the gospel isn't enough at some point, either now, currently, or at some point in the future? And hold your thoughts on that, because I actually reached out to one of my dear friends, one of our yobbers, who is a self-proclaimed Enneagram 6. I figured when we're talking about fear today, we got to go to the source. We need to talk to a 6, because 6s, if y'all know the Enneagram, they are fearful. They're beautiful people. They're very loyal, and they're very dependable, and they can be very awesome, but they struggle with fear. They struggle with worry. In a time of coronavirus, worst case scenarios, this is like the sirens are blaring. It's ground zero. It's time to batten down the hatches. This is like what the 6 has been telling us for years would happen, So that's kind of if you don't know the Enneagram, it's kind of a snapshot generalization. But no, I reached out to him about sexual, spiritual fears, and I was curious if he had any thoughts. And so he actually sent me this, which I wanted to share on the air on this episode. And he said, "Some time ago, I had a fairly significant bout of internalized homophobia, this intense fear of one's own gayness, that you care more about what others think of you than being honest about you being attracted to your own gender. Around 4 or so years ago, I began to believe that the more I pressed into Jesus for relational fulfillment, the more I would find he would be okay with me having a man as a romantic partner. In my life and context, I was at a point where I had community that knew me and desired me to remain in the traditional sexual ethic, which I was deeply thankful for. However, I knew if I were to pursue a man, my entire structure of support would crumble. Worst case scenario of me dating a man, losing all my friends, and being all alone. All my former support systems gone, plus Jesus' love, would leave me. Being outside of that sounded too much to handle. So feeling as the closer I got to Jesus, the more he'd be okay with me dating a guy, this twisted cascade left me staying far away from him. I was up to myself, figuring out what life would look like, doing, and thinking, how I could manage this anxiety of losing my whole setup of life on my own. The song Reckless Love by Corey Asbury hit the Christian music scene, and also with it, this unfounded fear. The bridge hit me. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. The lie of intimacy with Jesus equaling the end of my life was something God had been whittling away at for a year, and finally tore it down. The absurdity was realized, and my fear of myself and what my sexuality implicated was replaced by the pursuit of Jesus coming after me, whether or not I wanted it. So huge shout out to our Yobber friend who sent that. Become a Yobber on Patreon, and you too can share beautiful, eloquent paragraphs that I then read on the air. So thank you for passing that along. And yeah, I just wanted to piggyback my own thoughts real quick on that. Yeah, like I said, I've never really struggled with changing my belief system. That's felt fairly solid. And especially as I've become an adult and I've read all the texts and interpretations and things, I feel pretty solid about what I believe. But I do wrestle with that fear. Is Jesus enough? Because he also, I don't think he wants us to live in isolation. I think he wants us to intermingle with one another and support one another and be vulnerable with one another. And I guess with that comes a lot of fear of, like, am I going to be doing it right? Of course, I'm going to mess up. It's never going to be perfect, but do I still believe at the end of the day, whether I have a million friends or no friends, like, do I still believe that Jesus is enough and that he's coming after me and pursuing me? Even if I pursue a road of singleness and celibacy, and maybe with a lot more isolation than than would be attained otherwise if I chose another path on some level. Do I believe that he's enough to meet that need and pursue me through the struggle and through the disconnect and through the striving and the strife? And I'd like to think, I mean, a lot of times on my good days, of course I believe that, but on hard days, and there have been some hard days of late, I'll be honest, with this virus and with a lot of isolation, I wonder, like, gosh, like, is this a microcosm? Is this like a foreboding sense of the future of like everyone's gonna have things going on, but I'm just gonna be living alone in my own little bubble, and then what? Do I rely on my faith? Is Jesus, still relevant and still necessary today? And I have to believe that he is.
Yeah, I guess in the back of my mind, I have this fear that, well, so I know that God knows what I need, and I have my own kind of conception of what I need, and those things don't usually line up very well. But I guess I have this fear that, um, like, there will be such a big gap between those two understandings that, that like that it won't be sustainable, I guess.
Yeah, I would say that I don't think that I find myself afraid that he's not enough, but kind of like what you mentioned earlier, Tom, is how there are times that I do fear my own perseverance in the faith of just knowing myself and knowing um, and and feeling my old self and my old flesh and nature and just the um, that part of me that I have to put to death every day, and knowing that there have been times, there have been seasons of wandering in my own life, and um, feeling the kind of hardness of heart that comes with those seasons, and having a fear of um, what if I get to a point where my heart becomes so callous and so hard, and I cease to be able to feel that r- that repentance feels no longer possible, of going so far away that I can um, no longer turn back to uh, to him. And I think that as you just shared, I think that there is great reason to hope um, in the reality that he is also pursuing and comes after us. And there's reason to have hope in perseverance. But I will admit that there are times when things get um, really dark and really hard that I think I'm just going to give up. I can't do it anymore. Um, yeah.
And that's where it's huge having, I mean, I think that's why he wants us to interact with one another, because he truly can be the hands and feet of fellow believers,
Mhm.
helping us along when we don't have that strength on our own. So it's like, you know, on a like purely Sunday school answer, we have to say, yes, Jesus is all we need, or Jesus is enough. But the reality is, yeah, he inhabits his people and uses us to minister to one another and prop each other up when we don't have the strength. And I've experienced that, countless times in my life. I'm sure y'all have as well, when you felt you had nothing left or very little left, if nothing else.
Mhm.
And having a support system there, having fellow believers there has been huge for me
Mhm.
personally.
Yeah, I guess in the back of my mind, I have this fear that, well, so I know that God knows what I need, and I have my own kind of conception of what I need, and those things don't usually line up very well. But I guess I have this fear that, like, there will be such a big gap between those two understandings that, that like that it won't be sustainable, I guess, or that it's just like that I won't be able to accept it. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, there's a concept of like, you know, we have our desires, and some of them are good and healthy and right, and some of them maybe are not as much, or maybe too specific in some way. And God has, his way. Obviously, we trust that he is sovereign, he's running the show, and he's got all this organized and laid out and knows what we need. And so, yeah, what do you do with the gap? Like, there's something beautiful, the thought of his desires becoming my desires, like molding, reshaping my desires. But then it's also really annoying. Like, no, I want what I want. Like, I don't want to shift and mold my specific version of what I want, and as intimacy or connection or longevity with call it a living situation or a church or a group of people, whatever. Like what if God's desire is different, and I have to submit that and be reshaped by that. Like, on the one hand, that's beautiful, but on the other hand, that's from a human perspective, like, it's annoying. I want what I want. I don't want to I don't want to have it changed.
And I think that there's this there can be this misconception in our community that as SSA or gay folks, that we are the only ones who actually are needing to have our own desires shaped and conformed to that of God's, and that's just not true. And I think that's important to keep in mind, that that's a human thing. That's not unique to just folks like us.
Some years ago, working in various recovery communities, I became quite familiarized with the Serenity Prayer. It was written by American theologian Reinhold Niebuhr, and it's become popularized by Alcoholics Anonymous and recovery groups around the world. And it's a very simple prayer, super relevant, especially now when things are uncertain and some things are in and out of our control. The question is, how do we react? What do we do today, despite all the difficulty swirling in our midst? And even years removed from working in recovery communities, this singular prayer sticks with me, follows me where I go, calls me to change my perspective where it needs changing, calls me to trust where I need trusting, and calls me to let go where I need to. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Living one day at a time, enjoying one moment at a time, accepting hardship as a pathway to peace, taking, as Jesus did, this sinful world as it is, not as I would have it, trusting that you will make all things right if I surrender to your will, so that I may be reasonably happy in this life and supremely happy with you forever in the next. Amen.
Cool. Well, I feel like we talked about our fears a lot, and like, I think it's easy to talk for like 30 seconds about a fear and then sort of jump immediately to, but this is why it's okay. This is why we don't have to fear that. And I'm kind of proud of us for just like really exploring those fears and not having to rush to like reassure each other, like give each other like surface level reassurances that we've all heard before, but we still have to deal with the fears.
Yeah. And something I neglected to even mention in this episode, the number one command that's repeated in the Bible is do not fear, do not be afraid. Like it's repeated again and again and again. And you just get the sense that one of my favorite podcasters, Brant Hansen, he talks about this all the time. Like, why do you think Jesus said that so much? Like, is he just like insecure or what? Like, why is he constantly telling his people to not be afraid? And I think there's just a sense like of living that human experience. He knows that tendency inside all of us, not just Enneagram 6s, but inside all of us to be afraid and to worry and to forecast worst case scenarios. And the fact that he said, do not fear again and again and again is so like reassuring to know that he walked that road, a road ridden with fear, every turn that he experienced and lived that experience out. And so it's like such an assurance to know that the God I follow was one that experienced fear, faced it head on and came out the other side and wants us to know that he's there and he's leading us. And so, so I hope everyone listening, again, I know this thing is hitting us from all angles. We have plenty of people listening internationally. I didn't even mention that in the intro. It's not just an American thing. Like we have people in lockdown around the country, like orders from the entire countries to stay at home and not leave. And there's just undoubtedly fear in other places. And maybe that same level of fear is coming to America in these weeks to come. I don't know. But in a time that it's tempting to be deeply afraid, it's my hope that as believers, we can rally around a Savior who reassures us to not be afraid and to trust him. So special thanks to spiders for sponsoring this episode. Don't be afraid of spiders too, even spiders with really cool names. You need to be socially distant from those.
Also, I'd like to give a very special shout out to the 8-ish spiders that I consume while I'm sleeping every year. Thank you for giving up your life so I may have the micronutrients that you provide that I didn't even know that I needed. So thank you.
Micronutrients. Yeah. What are you benefiting from that? I wonder. Like half a gram of protein?
We don't even know, but it's keeping me flourishing.
I sort of imagine it's like this spider ritual, like it's a sacrifice. Like it's the thing where they're like, you throw a version into a volcano. It's like we have to choose one of us to get thrown into Jacob's mouth.
Yeah. What a visual. But in all honesty, I would love to hear your fear stories in the era of coronavirus or otherwise. Go ahead to yourotherbrothers.com/podcast. Find the episode 60 post on fear. Tell us with coronavirus, are there things you're afraid of in your neck of the woods where you are in the world? Has it affected you? Like maybe, I'm sure it's a growing trend now that someone knows somebody, not only has been affected, but tragically, maybe they've lost somebody because of this now. So we'd love to hear your stories about that, but then also anything else we talked about, relational fears, how it pertains to your choice to pursue a traditional sexual ethic and following Jesus, are the things that you're afraid about. We'd love to trade some stories and perspectives in the comments. It's always a joy when y'all are also vulnerable with us. It's reciprocated and it feels lovely. All right, y'all want to know about the huge announcement?
I do want to know what announcement is.
Okay, I'm really excited about this huge announcement, and it really was inspired by my daily walks that I referenced at the top of this episode. These daily walks where I'm listening to a podcast. I'll just go ahead and name it. It's called That Sounds Fun with Annie F. Downs, and she and this guy named Eddie, they just are talking every single day during a quarantine. She got quarantined by the government because she was associated with people who had coronavirus, and so she was not allowed to leave her home for 2 weeks. And rather than sulk and be miserable, she's a raging extrovert. And I kind of wanted to have an extrovert on the show today. Dean was supposed to be on this show, but he couldn't make it today. So I would have loved to hear kind of the extroverted perspective, as we're all introverts here today. But anyway, she's just like coping with this situation, like staying home for 2 weeks, like literally not leaving for 2 weeks for groceries, for anything. They've been having really a great time on this podcast, and I've been really enjoying it. And then lately just feeling really inspired. And when I was thinking about just how all businesses and communities are shifting and morphing and adjusting to the situation and how they can better meet their clients or like churches meeting the needs of their congregants. When I thought about all of that, I was thinking about YOB and what is the YOB response? What can your other brothers do during this time? And obviously, I mentioned at the top that we're increasing our Zoom communities for the foreseeable future. So we'll be having these Zoom chats for our supporters once a week for at least the next few weeks, and we'll just kind of see where it goes from there. But when I was thinking about other things we could do, and not only collectively as Your Other Brothers, but also personally as Tom, I've realized that I just need more on my calendar. I need to start doing things because I don't want to say going insane or going crazy in a literal sense, but on some level I'm losing it. Like it's been just like days are blurs. Like I don't know if it's a weekend or a weekday anymore. Like I have no idea what to make of it other than I need things on my calendar. I need things to look forward to, and I need things to do. And we have a pretty sweet community here at Your Other Brothers. I'm obviously quite biased, but hey, it produced Jacob and Ryan, so we must be doing something right? They came out of this community. So something that I'm going to commit to for at least 2 weeks, possibly more, but for at least the next 2 weeks, starting this Monday, when you hear this recording, starting in just a couple days, I'm going to be doing, I say daily podcasts, but they're going to be semi-daily. Let's say that. So I think what I'm shooting for is 4 days a week. Something like Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, maybe. And this is up for change, but we'll see. But basically what they're going to be 20-minute episodes, just really bite-sized episodes. And on these episodes, I'm going to just be having a conversation with somebody from the YOB community, one-on-one conversations, 20 minutes. We're just going to talk, and we might have serious, deep things to say, and we just might be joking and laughing the whole time for 20 minutes. And it's my hope that with these conversations, with these mini podcasts, that it's just something to look forward to. Because I know for me personally, I've been starving for content. Like I need more. It seems like there's not enough. Like it seems like there's an abundance of content out there on Netflix, in podcast world or whatever. But the ones that I've latched onto, the ones that are like bring me the most joy, I've realized I want more from them now because I need more content in my life and I need more joy and encouragement in my life. And so it's my hope that if you enjoy Your Other Brothers podcast twice a month, that this is something you could enjoy for like a more ongoing, consistent basis during this time where we're all cooped up inside and not able to leave, need more content to bring us joy and hopefully connect and resonate with us. And so Jacob and Ryan, if you're down to participate at some point in the next couple of weeks, I would love to have a one-on-one with you that I happen to press the record button on and put it out there for listeners. So that's the big surprise. That's the big announcement. And I've actually already talked to a few other guys about this in our community who are down to participate as well. So I'm really excited to not only talk to people that you have heard before on Your Other Brothers podcast, but perhaps some that you haven't. So
that sounds really exciting, Tom.
Yeah, and like I said, this is like I think it'll be fun to do a daily podcast. This is kind of like our first foray into a spin-off podcast. I've always wanted to have some sort of a spin-off show. Whether it was something I did or something someone else in our community took on. Like I like that idea of having another show, but this is an opportunity for me to also just like have an outlet every day to talk to people that I really love and have a great connection with. And I think I'd like to think because they've been on the show for the most part, that there's a chemistry there that we can have a conversation with, and hopefully it's my goal to just make people smile for at least 20 minutes a day when maybe the rest of it's so boring and you're so over this and maybe you even start to feel dread and fear rising up. But like for 20 minutes a day, dang it, you can listen to the Corona cast and hopefully be uplifted. So that's my goal starting in the next couple of weeks. You'll start to see more notifications than usual on your podcast app if you're subscribed to Your Other Brothers podcast. So do not be alarmed. Tom has not gone crazy yet. He's actually hoping to alleviate the craziness and find a healthy outlet. So stay tuned for that. I'm really excited for those conversations to come.
Tom's practicing self-care by spending more time in front of a microphone.
Correct. All right, y'all. So until our first Corona cast, for all Your Other Brothers, my name is Tom.
This is Ryan.
And this is Jacob.
Reminding you that you are not alone. Even the sparrow finds a home. See you next time, everybody.
Bye, everyone. Stay safe and healthy.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to Your Other Brothers podcast. Navigate more with us at yourotherbrothers.com and comment on this episode at yourotherbrothers.com/podcast. Subscribe to our show to never miss an episode. And if you enjoy what we do, consider rating and reviewing us on iTunes. You can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Your Other Bros. If you'd like to further support our storytelling effort, consider becoming a Yobber. Yobbers pledge monthly and receive perks like calls with authors and other supporters, access to a secret Facebook group, and additional podcast content. Visit patreon.com/yourotherbros for more information. Don't miss our monthly bonus podcast on Patreon, the YOBaLOGUE, featuring responses to previous podcasts, content not featured in public episodes, calls from listeners, and more. Ask us a question or tell us a story by leaving us a message at 706-389-8009. If you're new to the show, we'd love to hear from you. You can email us at podcast@yourotherbrothers.com. You can also write us at Your Other Brothers, P.O. Box 843, Asheville, North Carolina 28802. Until we journey next time, we're glad you're with us.